everyone. Here we go. What's happening?
Wow.
Are we live? We are? Uh-oh.
We're on the internet.
Mic check, 1, 2.
Yep.
Facebook Live, hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming to our winter, spring 2020 book buzz. We are so excited to see all of you here. And we want to thank everybody who's logged on and watching us on Facebook Live. This is a terrific event for us, and we love seeing all of you. We love hearing from people who are watching online. So what's going to happen is we're going to present titles for about an hour. Then we're going to take a break. So Facebook people, go get lunch, come back, put your computers back on, and around 1-ish, 1:10, try us, and we should be back up. Technology. So, thank you again, all of you. So just a few housekeeping items. I'm Virginia Stanley, the Director of Library Marketing at HarperCollins. And to my left is...
To Virginia's left is Christopher Connolly, Library Marketing Associate at HarperCollins. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Hi, I'm Lainey Mays. I'm the Library Marketing Assistant at HarperCollins, if you can guess.
Yes, we're all at HarperCollins, thank God, because otherwise security would have their hands full. Okay, so a few housekeeping notes before we quickly get to the books. We're hoping that you all are downloading our e-galleys on Edelweiss and or NetGalley. If you're not and you want to, including you out there on Facebook Live, please email us and let us know, and we will make that happen, and you will get whitelisted because we want you to, we want to get these e-galleys into your hands, and we would love for you to, how many Library Reads voters do we have here? Good. Oh, so cool. That's cool. I hope everybody watching on Facebook Live is raising their hands as well. But don't drop your mouse. Now, Library Reads is a cool thing, and we're thrilled to have so many titles on that list. It's a wonderful thing for everyone. Just some other things that of note, we have a podcast. All of this is on the handout. The handout is also online. We have a podcast, which is terrific, and we've got lots of author interviews, so do check it out. And we have a book club catalog, physical and online. And we're proud that the American Library's Transform Book Pick. This is a new initiative with ALA. It's a digital reading program that's offering unrestricted free access to the same ebook through public libraries for a designated period of time. That being this time out, first time out, October 7th to the 21st. And the inaugural selection is a HarperCollins publication called After the Flood by Cassandra Montag. It's a debut novel, female dystopian fiction, very cool, set in the future. Everything's underwater. Mother's looking for her daughter. It's so great, and it has such a wide readership, male, female, young, all really wonderful. So we're so excited that that our book was chosen. Lots of information on Library Love Fest, including an interview with Donna Seaman and the author, and on ilovelibraries.org. So either one of our sites, that site or our site, and you can get all the information you want about that. But pretty cool stuff. And I think that's it. Is that it?
That's it. We
Thanks
just have
for
our
coming.
intro slides.
Bye-bye.
Yep.
Have a sandwich.
Yep.
No.
All right, so I guess we need to start off with a
Yeah.
little tune.
Little tune.
I don't know if that's coming through at all. do.
Book buzz. HarperCollins book buzz.
Brought to you by Library Love Fest.
All right.
Thank you. We paid $300 to somebody to write that. Okay, Christopher, take it away.
Start us off. All right. High Fire, Owen Colfer. Artemis Fowl, what more do I need to say? He's a beloved author, wrote the Artemis Fowl series, has sold millions of copies, and now we have an adult standalone from Mr. Colfer. This is coming January 28th, and this is a super hilarious, kind of like irreverent, fast-paced adult novel with some YA crossover that follows Vern. He's a dragon. He's the last dragon living, essentially. He used to be known as Wyvern, Lord Highfire of the Highfire Yiri, a very proud dragon. But now he just goes by Vern, and he lives alone in a shack in the bayous of Louisiana, and he drinks a lot, and he watches a lot of Flashdance. Sounds like an okay existence to me, but he's sad, he's down, and he's lonely, and his path crosses with this troublemaker, this teenage troublemaker, Squib, who witnesses this completely deranged town sheriff committing some horrible crimes, and now the sheriff is after Squib, and Squib and Vern cross paths and form an unlikely duo. So Squib buys cigarettes and alcohol for Vern, and Vern protects Squib from this psychotic sheriff. It's so fast-paced and hilarious. Again, I think a lot of these Artemis Fowl fans have now grown up, and they're looking for something new and adult from Owen Colfer, and he completely delivers. There's a great behind-the-book essay on Edelweiss that Owen wrote, kind of explaining why he chose this dragon, why Vern, and why this story came to him. It's really interesting. I highly recommend it. Just a big deal for us. So this is coming January 28th, and that's High Fire by Owen Colfer.
All right. I have to talk to you about this. It is the right book. Okay. So, Valentine by Elizabeth Wetmore. This, if you don't know me and you see me walking on the street within 5 minutes of talking to me, this is what we're going to be talking about. I'm so excited about this book. It's just a stellar debut. I can't believe that it's a debut novel. But Elizabeth is just this writer. She's in writing all the time. She's great at characterization. She teaches characterization in her writing classes, and it just comes through in this book. It's so amazing, and I think, I can't wait for you to read it. Please pick one up or I'll get one to you. So this is a story of set in 1970s Odessa, Texas. So you get an oil field, very gritty and gross and dusty, and all of the men and women living there are very same thing, going through that, like going through all of the oil, and all of the oil's being sucked from the land, and it's kind of sucking the life out of them. And the beginning of the story, a girl named Gloria Ramirez, who's a first-generation immigrant, her mother's from Mexico, she survives, the day after Valentine's Day, she survives a brutal attack in the oil field by this, I say, like, good old boy in the town. So she gets away with her life, and this story goes from that to the trial, and then afterwards, like months later, and it's all of the women's points of view in the town on this story, and including Glory's. But the women, it's all women's perspectives, which is so cool, and they have just fun characters. Like there's D.A. Pierce, who's this like little girl running around. Her mom is gone, and she's just precocious.
She's amazing.
She's got a lot of gumption. She helps when she's not really helping. And then you have Corinne, who's this older retired teacher, and she's trying to figure out her life after her husband passes away. And all of them are bringing their own privilege and their own experiences, and because race is in the background, they see this in a different way as well. It's so beautiful, and I think Virginia and I both came in, we're like, it reminds me of Flannery O'Connor. It's just such great, gritty characters where you're just like, that's just who they are, and you get to know them in such a succinct way. And I'm gonna finish, but I have to tell you this quote from Bren Chancellor, who wrote Sycamore, and actually is a friend of Elizabeth's, and that's how the editor got this book. Listen to our podcast to learn more about that. So Bren said, "You'll read this book like a letter from a lost love, clutched in your hands, the heart in your throat. You'll carry it with you forever." And that's what I think about it. So that one's coming in April. I'm really excited about it.
Love that book. And love Sycamore. Did anybody read Sycamore and not love it? Does anybody want to read Sycamore? If anybody wants to read anything, just tell us, and we'll send it to you. Even if we didn't publish it. Why do I have 7 pens? Okay. Simon the Fiddler. Scooter, we good? Okay. We are, well, it doesn't matter.
Scooter's our cameraman. That's not the ghost of the building or anything like that.
Scooter? Where's Scooter? Ugh. So many things here. Okay. Okay, Paulette Giles. Can you hear me? I better pull this a little closer. It's unusual that you can't hear me. Simon the Fiddler, Paulette Giles. We all know Paulette Giles. News of the World, The Color of Lightning, Stormy Weather. News of the World was a National Book Award finalist, and it was a #1 Library Reads pick. She is just a terrific, amazing, beautiful she's such an incredible writer and a historian and a researcher, and she gets an idea for her story. She does this deep dive and comes up with a beautiful read. And that's what she's done here with Simon the Fiddler. So this is set at the end of the Civil War, almost at the end of the Civil War, and it's about this young man, Simon Boudlin, who is a fiddler, and he has managed, for the most part, to not to stay away from war, to not see action, to not be dragged into the war. But at the very end, he does, and so he gets a taste of it. But his talent gets him in with a position in this regimental band. And on the eve of the Confederate surrender, he's got these fellow bandmates, these guys that all can play some great tunes, and they're called to play for these officers and their families from both sides of the conflict. And when he's there, he notices this gorgeous woman who is with this colonel. Turns out that she is an indentured servant girl from Ireland, and she is the governess to the colonel's daughter. So she has to stay with this family for 3 years, and she can't look at anybody, she can't get a letter from anybody, and nothing. And he can't get her out of his mind. And so when the war ends and they go their separate ways, he goes around Texas, and you get to see Texas at that time, and she just draws this out so beautifully. And so he decides he's going to seek fame and fortune, but he's going to go back and find her. And so it's really, really compelling, because you see what he and his fellow pals are going to do now, and they have nothing. They are starving, and they are trying to figure out how they're going to make a buck. It's a beautiful story about this transitional time in history, and this love story too, where he is just so captivated by this woman and what he'll do to find her. So that's Simon the Fiddler by Paulette Giles, and it's coming out in April.
All right. 8 Perfect Murders, Peter Swanson. I was sitting in this very chair a year ago talking about his previous book, Before She Knew Him, and was so exciting to see that book come out. It really, I think, brought Peter a new level of success and critical acclaim. He's one of those authors you love and you want people to know about him, but sometimes they don't. But again, I think now people are waking up to Peter Swanson, just one of the best thriller authors, I think, working today.
Where's the jacket?
Oh, the jacket. The jacket's here. Sorry, I just started geeking out about Peter Swanson right off the bat. I forgot the jacket. So here's this. So with the newest novel from Peter Swanson, where are the notes? This is a thriller for book lovers. So this follows Malcolm, he works in this mystery bookshop. He's kind of like he's an aficionado for the mystery genre. And years back, for the bookstore's blog, he wrote this list of the 8 most perfect murders in fiction. There's also some movies involved, so he's pulling from Agatha Christie's ABC Murders, Patricia Highsmith's Strangers on a Train, and Ira Levin's Death Trap. That's just a sampling. So he put together this article and kind of forgot about it. But then years later, Malcolm walks into his used bookstore, and there's an FBI agent waiting for him. And there's been a series of murders that have seemed to have been specifically pulled from Malcolm's list that he put together. And she's at first working with Malcolm to kind of piece together the psychological profile and use his expertise to get to the bottom of this murder. But Malcolm, of course, has secrets of his own, which he is not too eager to share with the FBI agent, and he quickly becomes a suspect. If you know Peter Swanson, you know he's a twist master, but again, I think this has a special mark to it in that it is definitely a book for book lovers, for thriller lovers, just very referential and smart. I think of Anthony Horowitz, who actually blurbed this book. Anthony Horowitz is so good. And he said, fiendish good fun. So imagine that in Anthony Horowitz's voice, and even better. So this is coming March 3rd, and that's 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. More me. Book jacket. Here we are. We all love Laurie Rader Day here. She's, again, an amazing thriller author. She's highly involved in the community, Sisters of Crime. And this is great because Laurie always has very interesting. Last book, In a Dark Sky, was a very cool play on kind of the locked room mystery, kind of Agatha Christie style, about a dark sky park. This one, she's kind of pulling from the true crime murder podcast kind of crowd, where this woman, Alice, as a child, she was kidnapped. And luckily, you know, with childhood kidnappings, you have a certain amount of time where, you know, chances of survival increase. And her father ultimately did find her within that window. She's rescued, but of course scarred and traumatized from this experience. But now she's an adult, and she is so into like unsolved crimes. She's part of this online network, the Doe Pages, to try to contribute and help people who are suffering from loss or, you know, trying to figure out what happened to them. And she comes across a picture of the man who kidnapped her all those years ago. And I like, Lainey, when you're talking about this, when you give this spiel, people gasp, like, oh my God, she found this guy. And then basically what you do is you follow Alice as she kind of falls down the rabbit hole of who this man is. His picture quickly disappears from this website, and she's trying to figure out what actually happened all those years ago and what's this man's part in her disappearance. Again, we love Lori Rader Day. She's just an amazing author. She's in the Chicago area. We're doing a library hardcover edition for this. And she was, I should note, she was an Edgar Award-nominated author for Under the Dark Sky, which came out last year. So we love her. This is coming February 18th. That's the lucky one.
Okay. Next book, My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I'm sure a lot of you by now have heard of this book. I hope that you have. HarperCollins has been incredibly fortunate to be the publisher of this debut novel that has set the industry back on its heels, because this read is one of the most important reads I've ever experienced, and I think I can speak for you, Lainey, and you, Chris, and for anybody who's read it. This is not an easy read, but this is an important read. This is, as I say, it's a debut novel, and we'll start it out by saying that it's about we meet this woman who's 32 years old. Her name is Vanessa Y., and she learns about the sexual assault allegations against one of her teachers, her English teacher, who has been accused by another former student. This brings back memories for her of when she was at that school and he was her teacher and she had a sexual relationship with him. The person who is now coming to her and saying, look, we sort of knew what was going on, or, you know, I need you to help me. And she says, no, what happened to you is not what happened to me. That was love. She is being asked now to redefine that, question that, wonder, because she was a kid. She was 15, and she was, and he manipulated her, and he groomed her, and she felt that she was the love of his life because he told her that. This, I cannot begin to tell you how complex, how respectful this book is, how beautifully handled it is, if you can say the word beautiful. We could spend a lot of time on this book because I understand that, you know, people may not want to initially come to this, but I guarantee you, everybody that we've talked to who has read it, I haven't met one person yet who has said anything but, wow, what a powerful story and so responsibly told. And it just set off this industry-wide frenzy. It was our Winter 20 lead read pick. It was a Book Expo 2019 Buzz book. This is a debut novel. This woman has been writing this thing since she was 16 years old, starting it, stopping it. People were telling her, write something else, and she wouldn't, and she stuck with it. And what she has here is a masterpiece. I don't know what else I want to say about this because, well, you know what, if you go to Edelweiss, there are two things that you should read. One is a behind-the-book essay by the author, which I highly encourage you to read. Just click on it. It's right there on the Edelweiss page. And she talks about the impetus for this, you know, when she was a kid and what she was reading. She was reading Lolita for the first time when she was 14 years old. This other letter is from Jessica Williams, who is the editor of this book, and talks about what her experience was like trying to get this book and why she fought so hard to get this book. And she talks about the psychological grooming and how does it work, and about sexual abuse and how it can also feel like seduction, which I think is a very critical line here. So it's impeccably written. It's just so smart and so well done. Do you want to say anything else about it, Lainey?
It's just so stunning, and you know, in a world where we're trying to figure out, like, you can't always define consent, and you can't always define like what this love means to you if that's not always, there's a power, position power. And so she does it so well where you feel manipulated with her, and you're just like, wait, no, that's not okay. But that's how good the writing is and how into that character you are. I think it's going to be a household like character everyone's going to know about.
Greg Windsor, some of you may know Greg, librarian from Kansas, and we did an interview with him for our podcast, by the way, if anybody, well, never, we'll talk about that later. But we love to talk to librarians about what they're reading and what they love, and he brought this book up, and he said, and I'm a father of some kids, and he said, I mean, this is from a male point of view, and it's very interesting to hear his take on it. I thought as a father, and it was just, you know, he thought it was a very important read and couldn't recommend it highly enough.
Yeah, I think his quote is on the jacket flaps, so you can read his quote. Yeah.
So everybody will get one. We have enough copies for everybody, so and it's downloadable on a device. So anyway, that is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, one of the biggest books on our list and one of the most important books on our list.
All right, now for a great nonfiction. Love a good nonfiction. This is The Compton Cowboys by Walter Thompson Hernandez. And Walter is just a rising star from the LA Times he's an LA-based New York Times writer, and he writes a lot about marginalized communities or subcultures and just people that you might not always get their story. And so this book was based on an article, a feature he wrote called For the Compton Cowboys, Horseback Riding as a Legacy and Protection. And when this was launched to me, I was just in. I was in for it. I was excited to see. You should go to their Instagram account, Compton Cowboys, because they have all these cool videos, and you really get to know them there. But in this book, he really elaborates more on that story. And it's about these group of black men in Compton, and they grew up in a junior posse. It was kind of this kind of after school activity, but one of their aunts owned a ranch, and she really wanted to carry on a tradition of black cowboys, which you don't know much about. So you learn a lot about that too in the book. After the Civil War, they moved on, and in pop culture, you don't get that story as well. And so she really wanted to give them a sense of place and a safe haven to come and really connect to the horses, because that is its own community in itself. And after they grew up, a lot of them went their different ways, but now she's retiring, and so her nephew is going to take over and bring some of them back in, and they're going to try to get on the rodeo circuit, and you just get to know their stories, and it's told in their voice, and it's so amazing. And I mean, it has everything a good nonfiction for me. It's narrative, has a story, has some background of the person telling it. You learn something new, doubly, and you delve into a stereotype and what that is broken, because it really is safe for them. They can go up and down the streets and no cop stops them. How are you going to stop someone on a horse and say, they're not doing what they might think so? And it's so cool to hear about their stories. There's also going to be a YA edition, so it's a great community read. And so exciting news, Walter just received the Whiting Grant for nonfiction, and it's very prestigious, and it's he gets a $40,000 grant to work on. It's for a work in progress, so it's for this. It's a really big deal, and it goes to essential work to the culture. And I just they wrote a really great line about it. They said he writes with vigor, gusto, compassion, allowing his protagonists who have given him unparalleled access to be more than victims or villains. There's a genuine hope on these pages that is neither blind nor cheap. It's vexed, and it's real, and it's genuine, bringing the sense of possibility rather than despair to our conversations about inequality in American life. And that's all I'm going to say about it. It's amazing. And that's April, The Compton Cowboys.
The End of the Ocean by Maya Lundi. How beautiful is that jacket, right? Oh, my God. Okay, so this is by the author of The History of Bees, which was this monumental, it was a debut novel, and it was a #1 bestseller in Norway, and it was just this, won all these amazing awards, and just a captivating novel. And now she is back with another novel, and this is about climate change. It is, so it's 2 stories. One is set in 2019, and we meet 70-year-old Signe, who sets out on this voyage to cross an entire ocean in just a sailboat. She's haunted by the loss of the love of her life and is trying to make her way back to him. Forward to 2041. We meet David, and he's fleeing with his younger daughter from a drought in war-torn southern Europe where there's not enough water for all. They've been separated from the rest of their family. They're on this search to reunite with them, and that's when they find Signy's abandoned sailboat in a dried-out French garden miles away from the nearest shore. And what happens is they discover her personal effects, and the journey of survival and hope is now woven together, theirs and hers. It's an inspiring power of nature and the human spirit. So it's two parallel stories. Present-day 70-year-old environmental activist on her way on this life-or-death journey, trying to reach the French coast by herself, and on board is this cargo of materials that she hopes will save lives, and this other narrative taking place in 2041. As I say, her first book was an international bestseller, #1 book in Germany and Norway for the year. We have a great quote for this book. Like a Margaret Atwood for change, Maya Lundi brings a captivating, human, and heartbreaking face to the consequences of global warming. The End of the Ocean should be mandatory reading for anyone concerned about our environmental future. That's by Kirk Wallace Johnson, author of The Feather Thief. We have pages of quotes about this book. It's very, very powerful. This is coming from our imprint Harper Via, and I can't say enough about it. It's wonderful. As I say, tons of quotes, and it's perfect for book clubs. I will say that, because she brings global issues to book club fiction, according to Los Angeles Times. She just leans on these emotional storylines about human lives that are affected by these climate changes, like she did with bees. So it broadens its appeal to fans of women's fiction and issue-driven fiction alike. And this was originally published in Norwegian. It was Harper Via, our new imprint. So that's End of the Ocean by Maya Lundi, and that's coming out going on sale January.
Cli-fi. Climate fiction. You heard it here first, I hope. Cli-fi.
Have you heard it anywhere else?
Okay.
Put your hands down.
It's a thing. It's like fetch. We're going to make it happen.
Fetch. That's so
Cli-fi.
fetch.
We're so cool.
All right.
All right, now we're going to hurry along because it is 11:57, and we have to stop at 12:30. And we have 198 books to get through.
Yes, we do. All right. Louise Erdrich. She's probably an auto-buy for all of you, but this book is... Every book is a big deal with Louise. She's a literary mastermind. So The Night Watchman, which is coming March, is from the author. She wrote La Rose. She won the National Book Award. The Roundhouse, her last book, Future Home of the Living God, which is a really cool kind of dystopian novel, a little bit of a departure for her, Margaret Atwood-esque. And everything she does, she touches with gold. So this is a very interesting story in that it is based on Louise's grandfather, who... Basically, the story follows Thomas, who's a night watchman at this ball-bearing plant outside this rural town in North Dakota. And this is 1953, and Thomas, of course, is just trying to make his way, maintain a job, but he sees what's happening on the floors of Congress. There's this new emancipation bill, which, however narrowly disguised it is, it's basically just pulling away rights and land from Native Americans, and this is a huge kind of pivotal turning point for the Native American community. And so Thomas takes it upon himself to take this fight to Washington, D.C., and of course put everything he has at risk along the way. But you have this whole vibrant cast of characters which just jump from the page. There's this young precocious woman, Pixie, who just graduated from high school, and she's a valedictorian, and she's not interested in settling down and living the small town life. She wants to follow her sister to Minneapolis, and she hasn't heard from her sister, and she's kind of saving money and trying to get to the bottom of where her sister is. And again, all these characters are just so alive. And again, Thomas, this character is based on Louise's own grandfather, who did take this fight to Washington, D.C. back in the 50s. So a very important book from Louise Erdrich. It's The Night Watchman, and it's coming March 3rd. And I think more moi. So, Dead to Her by Sarah Pinborough. God, I love Sarah Pinborough. I first read her when we published her previous book, Cross Her Heart, which was brilliant, a hard read at times because it delves into kind of like childhood abuse and poverty, but it's also a thriller at its core and just chock full of amazing twists. She's just a fantastic thriller author. She wrote Behind Her Eyes, which was a New York Times bestseller, started the hashtag trend WTF that ending to help contextualize things. Stephen King said, you should read Behind Her Eyes. It's bloody brilliant. And so with her new novel, this is going to actually take place in Georgia, Savannah, Georgia. She's a British author. Her previous novels have taken place there. But this is in the moneyed halls of Savannah, Georgia. And you follow Marcy, who is the second wife of this very successful man. And Marcy pulled out all stops to she was the woman that this man cheated on, and now she's his second wife, and she's going to stop at nothing to maintain her station in life, this moneyed kind of aristocratic population. But Marcy is at a party with her husband and her husband's boss, and her husband's boss brings home a young, beautiful wife who's black, and in this community that kind of makes her stand out even more. And basically what you have is this head-to-head between Marcy and Keisha, who is the new wife of this boss. She's now Mrs. William Radford IV. And Marcy notices that Keisha and her husband, really sparks kind of start to fly at this party when they first meet. And Marcy is on edge, and again, she'll do everything she can to maintain her station in life. Very much, I think, of the Liv Constantine, The Last Mrs. Parrish, just like really fun high society maneuverings. And again, you get both viewpoints for these two characters, kind of a cat and mouse chase. Just brilliant. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Dead to her. There we are.
Start again.
Start again. All right, in reverse. Okay. I don't know. So, yeah, so again, Leanne Moriarty, Liv Constantine, very much for fans of that. We just love Sarah Pinborough. So that's Dead to Her. It's coming February 11th.
So we should just stay on that for a sec so that everybody can take a look at that, and if there's anything that you...
And I should mention the Starred Review, which is coming in the November 1st issue of Booklist. With Dead to Her, Pinborough plants her flag as the master of seductively sinister suspense. What a sentence. This absorbing tale will satisfy and even surprise fans of Jennifer McMahon and Gillian Flynn.
Hot off the presses.
Yeah, that just came in. We were so excited. Okay.
All right. Next, Dance Away With Me by Susan Elizabeth Phillips. Any Seppies in the audience? I heard I have to ask.
In the house. There's a Seppi in the
Got
house.
a Seppi back there.
Stephanie Anderson.
I heard I have to ask. So if you don't know, Susan Elizabeth Phillips, that's her fan base name. But she is the only 4-time recipient of the Romance Writers of America prestigious Favorite Book of the Year award, and she received their Lifetime Achievement Award. Everyone loves her. She writes such great things, but this is her, after 4 years, this is her standalone, and it's not a Chicago Stars book. It's something totally different, and it's more like Kristen Hanna pre-Nightingale. Like, that's the vibe. So, and in this story, we have a woman named Tess, who is a midwife, and she's a young widow, and so she's trying to get away from things in her life, and she goes to the Tennessee mountains, and there, she just wants solitude, but then she meets all of this cast of characters. There's like a teenager and this helpless infant she has to help, and then, other people that are in the town, but she meets someone just as headstrong as her, and this is the romantic interest, Ian North, and he's going to make her question everything. And so it's got everything that her usual story, typical fish out of water story. There's drama and romance and just really fun characters, lots of them to choose from. So we're really excited about this. And then you can go back and become a Seppi after you finish this one. So that's Dance Away With Me, and that's in June. Thanks, I'll be here all night.
Carol, I should mention you were spotted on Facebook Live. Rosemary Pastillo says, I see Carol Fitzgerald in the front row. Say hello. Hello from Carol.
It's not really Carol, it's your sister. The turquoise gave you away.
It's like E! News. Who do you see at this event? So the next one is The German Heiress by Annika Scott, right? I'm going right? All right, okay. So This is another World War II historical fiction, and I'm going to get to that because that's my first question. Why is this one different? We're going to get to that one in a minute. But Annika's a journalist, and she wrote for the Philadelphia Inquirer and the Chicago Tribune, and now she lives in Germany. So she really threw herself into research for this book. It's heavily researched, really great setting of time and place. And in this story, it's different because it's told from the perspective of a German woman during the war. She runs this family ironworks empire, and so throughout it, obviously, she's doing pretty well throughout the war, and she's kind of just, maybe doesn't know everything that's going on, but doesn't ask a lot of questions. But 2 years after the war ended, she's just got a lot of questions about her family's past and how much they did have to do with it, and she goes on this refuge. She's going to go to her friend Elisa's, and while she's there, this British officer is just hell-bent on arresting her. He thinks she did something, and then to top it all off, Alyssa's missing. So they don't know where she is, and so she kind of teams up with this guy named Jacob, who he works on the black market, and he's kind of does some sketchy things, and he's looking for her on his own set of time, looking for different reasons, and they're going to team up to find her. It's like the cat-mouse chase, strong female characters, and there's a great PS section, so it's going to be great for book clubs, good to talk about, but also just like I said, like what makes this different? There's so many out there, and that's my first question, because I love historical fiction, but what is different? What story is it going to tell? And this one, it just really shows like this woman's being complicit during the war, but in a sympathetic way, and like the blurred lines that happened to a lot of people that were living there, and what is right and wrong. And it's from a perspective of someone who was a little bit on the other side. So really excited about this one, The German Heiress, Annika Scott, and it is on sale in April.
Okay. Next book, Separation Anxiety by Laura Zigman. I love this book so much. Thank you. So this is from the author of Animal Husbandry, which is a huge bestseller. And it is, it's a hilarious novel, but it is also a very tender, authentic, and I don't know. It's very uplifting. It's not just laugh out loud. It is written by this woman who gets you from page one. So you meet this woman Judy, and and life has not gone her way. Her marriage is not so great. And she misses when her boy was little, and she could hug him and kiss him and smush him, and now he's a teenager, and he doesn't, he's like monosyllabic. She did have a brief career as a children's book author, but that took a nosedive. She also has a friend who's dying of cancer, and you're thinking, why do I want to read this book about this woman who's got everything going wrong? Because that's what happens, and this is the way she's dealing with it, through humor. And she has this void in her life, and the only way that she fills that void, and it's not a planned thing. She's going through her basement, she's cleaning stuff out, and she sees this sling that somebody had given to her 1,000,000 years ago when her son was a baby, and I don't even think she ever wore it. But she looks at the sling, and then she looks at her dog. And then she looks at the sling, and then she looks at her dog. And then she takes the dog, and she puts it in the sling. She feels better. And that's fills the void. And people think that's wacky, and it is a little wacky. But to her, it gives her a comfort, and it fills a void and she feels connected again. She feels a heartbeat. She feels warmth. She feels a purpose, because she's not getting that with her friendship with her dying friend. It's fading away. She can't get in touch with her kid, really. He's not there, really. And her husband, they can't even afford to get divorced. And her career is in the crapper. So everything's bad. But the dog gives her purpose and fills her. However, of course, if you walk around carrying your dog all over the place, people are going to, take issue with you, and they do. So what I love about this book is that I just love the voice of this character. I think that she looks at herself, and she is honest with herself, and I just find her incredibly relatable. Not that I walk around with a dog attached to me. You never know.
I would.
You might.
I would.
I don't know. I don't think I do that. But
If it was acceptable, I would.
well, yeah. I just love her. All right, so here's what I want to tell you. Okay, they're calling this the next Where You Go, Bernadette. She's beloved. She was in the industry for a long time. She was a book publicist at Knopf. I have to read you this quote. I know we are so short on time, but I have to read you this quote from Laura Lippman. Oh, we have quotes from Alice Hoffman, Claire Massoud, Chelsea Handler, Laura Lippman. This Laura Lippman one kills me. Sometimes a book finds its way to you, and you just know instantly that this is the book you need now. That's how I feel about separation anxiety. I think it's the book everyone needs right now. It is compassionate and funny, articulating with gentle humor the terrible things that we're all grappling with. To steal a phrase from my daughter, it made me happy cry. It's great. And if you go to the Edelweiss page, you'll read a letter from Laura Zigman about where she's been, because she hasn't been writing. And the first line of it says, "So it's been a while." And then she goes on and talks about the 22 years since her first novel, Animal Husbandry, was published, and she talks about why she stopped, what happened to her. And I just think it's a very relatable story that all of us are going to hit the rocks some days, and and we stop, and then we try and get up again. And this is what she's done with this book, and it is just magnificent. So that is Separation Anxiety by Laura Zigman. It's coming out in March.
Can I just point out that Chelsea Handler's quote says, "If I could, I would," and I feel it.
All right. Next book is thank you. Thank you. It's like Carol Merrill, remember, from that, what was that show? No, it's forever ago. Monty Hall. Let's make a deal. Okay. Thank you, Carol Merrill. All right. The Shape of Family by Shilpi Samaya Gowda. So she's the author of Secret Daughter, which sold a bazillion copies, 350 copies in the United States alone. Golden Sun was also a huge bestseller. Both of those books were librarian favorites. And, she's so smart. She's such a great writer. Her books have been translated into more than, I think, 30 languages, sold over 1 million copies. She has a bachelor's of economics. She's been to ALA a bunch of times. She's really wonderful. This is a story about this family, the Olander family, and the wife, Jaya, is the daughter of an Indian diplomat. Her husband is a banker from middle-class Philadelphia, and they meet in this pub in 1988 out in London. And they get together, they get married, they have their cultures, and they learn about each other's lives and their cultures and their families, and they're welcomed into each other's lives and the families' lives. They have 2 children, a 13-year-old girl and a little boy, Prem, who is, I think he's 8. And so they have this wonderful life, although the kids in school do get some pushback from time to time because they don't look like the other kids in their school. So there is that. I mean, they're touching on all these things about this family, but there's a tragedy that takes place. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but a tragedy takes place within the family, and the story is about how they all react and deal at the time and in the future, and the ramifications of this tragedy, which I could tell you, but I'm not going to, because why? Let you figure it out. You'll see. It's so good, though. I was reading it on the subway, and it was like, don't let this be what I think it's going to be. And then it happens, and it's like, oh, God. It's so sad. But it's so real, and it can happen, and it does. But the one thing that the editor did tell me was that this story was actually based on something that happened in the author's life. One of her schoolmates got sucked into a cult. That's not a spoiler. But this woman died, and it had such an effect on the author that she explores why that girl was so vulnerable and what led her to that in the first place. That is not the spoiler, so just go with it. But it's so good. It takes place over several years, and you see how this family deals with what has happened. But she's a terrific, terrific writer. So that's The Shape of Family by Shilpi Samaya Gowda, and that is coming out in March.
All right. Tender Mercies, A Mother's Story of Separation at the Border by Rosaira Pablo Cruz and Julie Schweiter Colazo. So I remember... Oh, yeah, excuse me. So we don't have a jacket yet. We have the 2 author photos. This is Rosie on the left, and that's Julie on the right. So I vividly remember the editor at launch presenting this book for summer 2020. And there were a lot of red, teary eyes in the room when she was talking about this. This is a ripping, just heartbreaking story. It will tear out your heart. It will put it back in, though, gently, and you will come out eyes open, healthy, but just affected regardless. So Rosie is a woman who was living in Guatemala, and she owned a small store there, and with the conditions of Guatemala being what they were, she took herself and 2 sons, a 15-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they made the perilous journey to cross the border into America. They came into Arizona, and basically immediately after crossing the border, after all of this, just horrible conditions, she was almost immediately separated from her 2 sons. And Julie, she founded the Immigrant Families Together, which is an organization that raises like funds and pro bono legal representation for parents who've been separated from their children. This is something we've seen in the news a ton. I think getting that ground level look at a woman or kids who were affected by this, what their struggle was, everything they went through, all the perilous, just the fraught journey and the conditions in Guatemala and why they're coming here. That's such an important narrative to get. And again, this is a story of Rosie and then Julie coming to her aid to reunite her with her kids. Rosie is in the United States and is pending some legal updates for her citizenship. But again, this is a story of everything they went through and everything that kind of transpired to get them back together. Again, it's a tearjerker. It's such a hard story, but it's an important one. It's something we can't shade our eyes from. So this is coming June 2nd, Tender Mercies by Rosie Pablo Cruz and Julie Schweiter-Collazo.
Okay, next is These Women by Ivy Bakota. So you might know Ivy from Visitation Street or Wonder Valley. She was an LA Times Book Prize finalist, and she won the Strand Critics Award. I'm sure you know her. She's back with a really amazing novel. This one, I'm just swept away when I read it. But I mean, this is from a true crime lover, and if you're a true crime lover, you'll really enjoy this one because it's all about agency. And I think in the true crime community, there's a lot of talk about women and women who maybe don't have desirable jobs or maybe labels for who they are. They're really put in this label and they move on. Like, this is what they are. It's not about the person themselves, and there are a lot of people advocating for that, and this book really puts that at the forefront, and that's the conversation. So it all revolves around these women in LA, in South LA, and they maybe are on the outskirts of society, or they're, one's a young dancer, one's a drifter, but she's trying to get over her daughter's, she's adrift after her daughter's murder, and then there's a cop and somebody is a performance artist. So you have all these women in the community. I keep saying these women, but that's the best way to say it. In the community who are all connected to this one man who has some murderous tendencies. And the way that I heard it, which I think is the best way to explain it, it's about a serial killer minus a serial killer. All the women he affects without him, and that's amazing because it's like, who cares? I don't want your voice. I want the voice of people who are affected. And so it's just the perfect crime novel for 2020. It's a subversion of the crime thriller and the serial killer novel, and it's about victims and family members. And there's a lot going behind this book. It's going to be a big book of summer. Hopefully, we're really getting behind it. Like I said, agency and true crime lovers alike, you'll love it. Or even if you're not, it's just women. It's in a way like Valentine because you do get all the women's perspectives. Very different books, but I love that. I love hearing all the women's perspectives and taking out the voice of maybe that always goes over the crowd sometimes. So that's These Women, Ivy Bakota, coming in May.
Scooter, I don't know if you can see this or not. Chris, can you hold that?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Universe of Two by Stephen Kiernan. We don't have a jacket yet, so that is this author photo. So Stephen Kiernan wrote The Baker's Secret and The Curiosity. This is a fictionalized account of the life of Charlie Fisk, who was this gifted mathematician who was drafted into the Manhattan Project and ordered against his morals to build the detonator for the atomic bomb. When I started reading this book, I felt like I was in the middle of a Judy Garland movie from the 40s because you meet her and his wife, or wife-to-be, and she is a musician and she works in the store, and he comes in and they sort of, it's very sweet. They do this little dance together, and you get to meet them on their own. And he just seems like a very gentle man, and that's how the book starts out. You get to meet them separately, and then as they grow together, and then he is working on this project, which he can't really tell her too much about. He's a graduate from Harvard at the height of World War II, and he's assigned to the Manhattan Project, and he's working with Robert Oppenheimer, who they call the old man. I think he was like 39 years old. It's very interesting. It's got a very interesting backstory to this. This is also a love story between he and his wife, and what they do together, and what they realize, what has happened, and that they struggle with their conscience, because what they're ultimately working on. It's so good. August 2020 marks the 75th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. If you go to Edelweiss, there on the Universe of Two page, there's a great letter from Stephen Kiernan, writes about why he wrote this. This is a really cool line. I know we've got to go, but he says, "The secret behind my new novel is that it is based on a real person. 4 years ago, I read an essay in the Georgia Review about a man who worked on building the atomic bomb and later went on to become a world-famous cathedral organ builder. I remember exactly where I was sitting because I lifted my head out loud and said, 'That is a novel.'" And he talks about what he did, after this period in time was over, and it's just fantastic. He says, "It's my fervent hope that Universe of Two will humanize the misgivings shared by the bomb's architects through its story of a man and woman trying to love one another while they are trapped in creating the strongest instrument of slaughter in human history." I mean, we've all heard these stories and we've seen these, movies and whatnot, but to take this person's life and to, fill in the blanks and make this such a readable, beautiful story about him, and then what they went through together, and then, as I say, the grappling with it. He talked to so many people to write this book, and it's the first one to reveal the deep division among the many scientists building the bomb. They had weekly debates, they had resignations, they had petitions to the Secretary of War and to Truman begging them to demonstrate that the bomb was going to be in a neutral place and not use it on people. It's really it's impossible to talk about this quickly and effectively, but I encourage you to read it. He's a great writer. He's a great researcher and beautiful writer, and this is a really important book. So that's Universe of Two by Stephen Kiernan. Yep. Where is Mercy House? Mercy House, Mercy House. I love Mercy House so much. I really do. Why am I talking like that? I don't know. Okay, so Mercy House is so great. It's by Alina Dillon, and it is a debut, and it is about this century-old row house in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, and it serves as this home for women. It's a safe haven for women who are abused and abandoned, and it is run by this badass nun, Sister Evelyn, and I love her, and I went to Catholic school, so I can say that. She's fabulous, and women go to her in the middle of the night. They knock on that door, and in they go. And what's really cool about this, there's a lot of levels that are cool about this book. I love Sister Evelyn. She's doing all the things that she shouldn't be doing because the Catholic Church doesn't want her to do things like help women get divorces or abortions and that sort of thing, and she's doing it anyway because she knows that she should. She's old, and she's tough on the outside and tender on the inside. And but you've got these great cast of characters. I don't even want to call them characters. They're women, and they have tough times. But they're, they're, I don't know, there's a Chinese and Russian woman who lives there, and there's a prostitute and a Haitian immigrant, and I don't know, there's just all these really cool women and how they try to work together and support each other and piss each other off too. But it's so great. And you also know that there's something going on with Sister Evelyn, and you find out more about that as you go through the book. But it's really wonderful. She'll do anything for these women to protect this place and to protect them, and it's fabulous. I just love this book so much. This bishop comes into town, and he's set to, well, I won't tell you more, but he's a bad dude. Anyway, it's so good. It's Mercy House. It's great. One thing I will tell you is that there's information on the handout about this, but Book Club Girl, run by Jen Hart here, does this Book Club Girls Night Out. And so if anyone is interested, we have flyers here or wherever they are. Outside, okay. And so this author and Susan Wiggs, whose book is already out and has another one coming out way later, so we're not presenting that here, are going to be here on November 14th. So there's a nominal, well, it's $40, but I mean, there are seats left if you want to come, and we can talk to you about that, but that's here. But she's going to be here. So that's Book Club Girl Night Out, so you can talk to us later about that, but just love, love, love this book.
Okay.
How we doing?
All right, we have like 12 books, 5 minutes. We can do that.
Speed talk.
Nice, sing away. Let's just keep talking till our CEO shows up, and then we come, everybody hide.
All right, 88 Names by Matt Ruff. So Matt Ruff is the critically acclaimed author of Lovecraft Country, Bad Monkeys, many more. He kind of jumps around with genre, but it's always he takes a very interesting concept and then spins it in these crazy, twisty ways you wouldn't expect. Lovecraft Country was kind of Lovecraft mixed with historical fiction. So he's just amazing. But this is a virtual reality epic that follows basically this man, John Chu. And this is in the near future where virtual reality is completely immersive. A lot of people spend a lot of time there. So you can kind of think Ready Player One, but this is an adult fiction. And you follow John, who he makes his living kind of guiding people with a lot of money but not a lot of time around these virtual reality worlds. And they pay him to basically guide them to high levels and rare loot and things like that. And that's how he makes his living. And John takes a job with this mysterious benefactor who just goes by Mr. Jones. And Mr. Jones doesn't seem to know much about virtual reality at all, which is kind of weird. This is the world we live in. And John Chu begins to suspect that Mr. Jones might not be who he claims to be. And in fact, he might actually be the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. And it's hilarious. And what I love about this, so basically what happens is he takes this job, is in way over his head, and then this danger starts to kind of overflow into the real world as well. But most of this takes place in VR, and it's just a fascinating world. It doesn't get into the technical aspects so much. It's more about like, what is it when everyone has control over their identity and what you see and what you don't see, and what do you know about someone truly? So you really have this kind of like fluidity with people's identities, which is really cool as John tries to get to the bottom of who Mr. Jones, in fact, is. I did a podcast interview with him recently, and so I highly recommend checking that out. And this is coming March 17th, so that's 88 Names by Matt Ruff. And
Not 87, 88.
88.
Not 89.
88 names. 88. Okay.
Same number of keys on the piano.
Wow.
Ooh, the more you
Are
know.
we
Race the sands. Brian's not here.
Race the Sands? Wow. Okay. Appropriate. Sarah Beth Durst. We all love Sarah Beth Durst here, right? If you love genre, like that classic kind of really meaty, high fantasy novel, that's what Sarah Beth does, and she is such a huge library supporter. She's come to so many of our conferences, and her previous Queens of Renthia series, and then the subsequent The Deepest Blue, all took place in a similar world. This is a standalone for her, completely new, epic standalone. Women-centric, strong, fantastic women characters that follows basically two people, Tamra and what becomes her mentee, Raya. And this is a world where you are reborn, depending on how you live your life, you are reincarnated as a hawk or a heron or a tortoise or a jackal or a human. You have this kind of rebirth situation. And also within this world, there is this famed sport where you basically ride these giant creatures around. They're called Keyhawks. And it's a respected kind of gladiatorial, is gladiatorial a word? I don't know.
Sure.
Like a gladiatorial.
It's so
write
cool
that
he made
down.
up a name, a word.
Gladiatorial environment.
I have
where-
a rash. Put some gladiatorial on it.
Doctor's orders. All right. But Tamra, she's kind of like this grizzled veteran of this race circuit. And she was a great, but she had some personal injuries, and now she's kind of on the sidelines looking for someone to take under her wing. And that's when she comes across Raya, who is this kind of misbehaving younger woman who is running from a very harsh family background. And so Tamara takes Raya under her wing to become like the next great writer of Keyhawks. So it's a great quest. It's so much fun. Sarah just has an incredible imagination. Just, the imagery, the world building is everything you can want from like a very strong epic fantasy. So this is coming April 21st, a really great standalone, I think a great way to enter the mind and the world of Sarah Beth Durst. So that's Race the Sands.
Okay. So next is Letters to the Earth, and this is very timely and exciting for anyone you knew that participated in the school strike for climate. Like, this is perfect. So it's a compilation of letters, but there's an introduction by Dame Emma Thompson. We love her. And it all started with this group called Culture Declares Emergency. And this is from our UK office, from Harper 360, which is our imprint who brings other books from other places around the globe. And so this is from Harper UK, and this organization invited people to write a letter to the earth. It doesn't have to be, anything. It could be multi-generational. It could be, whatever they wanted. Power, influence. It could be about other species. It doesn't matter. But really to sit back, contemplate, and reflect on what this earth does for you. Not how you're going to save it, not how you're going to get other people to save it, what it does to you. And so this is like the largest collective planetary crisis letter writing thing, anything. They had over 1,000 letters, and people wrote in, and they wanted to compile them in this book. And you should check out at culture-declare, and you can see all of their stuff on Instagram, and all the people that come together. Yoko Ono wrote something for it. And I was reading through, they had people of all ages writing. It was really beautiful. And these birds are all throughout the book, so you'll see that. But also when I was reading something that really struck me, there was a letter from Luke Jackson, who was 12 years old. And his line at the end said, "We need to open our eyes to the world, or it will close its eyes on us." And all of these young kids are just coming together and talking about what the earth means to them in poetry or verse or, handwritten letters. It's so beautiful. And you can also follow it hashtag Letters to Earth. It's so wonderful just to see everyone. There's 5 sections: love, loss, emergence, hope, and action. And, sometimes it's not always about what you can do. It's about appreciating what you have and how you're going to save it. So I really urge you to look at this. It's a pretty quick read, but it's really heartfelt and sweet. And it's coming out for the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, so that's exciting. Greta's working hard. She's going to try to save us, but we got to come together and start a conversation. So, Letters to the Earth, that's out in April.
Okay, why don't you do the next one, too?
Okay. So, we have Promises of the Heart. Might be the last one. We'll see. Thank you. So, Promises of the Heart, Nan Roster. And she is award-winning novelist, wrote 7 novels, but this is a first in a new series, the Savannah Sky series. It's very charming and sweet. Kristen Higgins, author, said a multi-leveled, beautifully written story that will glow in readers' hearts long after the last page is turned. All about a couple who are thinking about adopting after they've had several miscarriages, but they don't know, and a dog comes into their life, and they meet someone who is going back and forth to foster homes, and they decide that maybe they can be a part of it. Very sweet, fan of Debbie Maycomer or Dot Frank or Susan Wiggs, but also infertility is really big in the news, and we're talking about it. It's not overtly Christian, but there's a little bit of faith in there as well, and really hope you enjoy this new series by her. So that's Promises of the Heart, and that's in February.
All right. So we have a few more books to do before the break, but Brian Murray, our CEO, is here, and Chris, would you go get Brian, please? He's going to speak to you now for a few minutes. So we have that one over